Namaskara, Bengaluru. Welcome to Beyond Books. And I'm pretty excited to have today's podcast with someone whom I know for quite some time. And we'll be deep diving into the stories, strategies, and the passion behind the real change in the education. Today, we'll be looking into how we're going to be shaping the mind and building the future which goes beyond the textbooks and examination. And I have truly somebody who's already doing that particular work, Miss Aisshwarya DKS Hegde, who has been a trailblazer of really transforming and redefining the education and being a biggest advocate for the mental health. Once again, it's an honor for me to really have you here in our podcast. Thank you so much, Aishwarya.
Thank you, Chetan. I still remember the day Shobna ma'am introduced me to you saying that he studied in Global Academy of Technology. So the only connection we had was you were my senior at some point of time because we studied in the same college. Probably that's my fond memory of how we started conversations
Correct.
Initially, So thank you so much for having me. I really love the name Beyond Books. I think education is beyond books.
Absolutely.
And it's a great way to start a conversation on how we can actually converse beyond books.
Correct.
I'm quite excited.
And for me, it's pretty close to me because, as I have told you multiple times, that I've been really bad with my academics throughout my life. So for me, it has to go beyond books, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge in the education system is to move beyond academics.
Yes.
And academics is not the soul of everything.
Correct.
But it's a part of how we structure things.
Right.
I think it's a big wall of a difference when we understand it. And I think schools have moved ahead because schools and education talk about holistic development today and no more academic development.
Correct.
So those words actually make impacts.
It makes a lot of impact.
Yeah.
If I go back, Aishwarya, I've known you for quite some time. We had a lot of detailed, deep dive conversations in academics, beyond academics. But one thing I always wanted to ask you, which I never asked you all these years.
Okay.
Right? The question has been that how did you get into the education stream? What really, what was the turning point in your life which gave you that calling, hey, you know what, that's the field I need to be?
I think education was no choice for me. My father actually decided that I'll be a good educator initially. I don't know if he knew I would be a good educator, but he definitely said it's an opportunity he could provide to me. Right? And he said, we've had institutions, and he says he had planned it and put me into his own institution, Global Academy of Technology, to understand what and how we can improve our own institutions. And my father calls himself a very passionate educator. He calls educationists by choice. So he I didn't know if it was choice for me, but he made sure I had no choice but to get into education. But for me, earlier during the days, I felt like, it is an opportunity in front of me, an opportunity not everyone gets.
Right.
So Aishwarya, let's see what happens.
Right.
So that was my mindset when I actually jumped into education. Initially, education wasn't easy for me. And administration and education for a 22-year-old walking into institution was like a nightmare.
Right.
It started from me looking at how I look in terms of my clothing to how I'm even smiling to the old principals and teachers in and around me, because they have seen me as a kid who's walked in, probably to play in that play area on a Saturday and Sunday. So how was changing that was like the questions. But what made me stay in education is that it gives me challenges every day. Every day is a challenge. Every day you're solving a problem. Every day there is a new kind of generation stepping into classrooms. Every day you are trying to create a curious, class and theory for them in a curriculum. So that kept me going. And today, what changed my life is I realized that the child in me is so alive till the time I'm in education.
Right.
So I want to keep that child in me alive. I think that's something that a lot of us lack as we start growing up.
Correct.
So the turning point of me was the day I realized that I'm enjoying what I do, and not many people get to enjoy what they do and still have a living.
Absolutely. I think very beautifully you've spoken about that what you enjoy the most and you're living that. Right? So there's no Monday blues for you. I can say that.
Yeah, and no, I wouldn't say there's no Monday blues for me. There are definitely Monday blues for me. I feel like, I don't remember who said it, but I've heard someone saying that, 1/3 of your life has to be happy, 1/3 of your life has to be sad, 1/3 of your life has to be confused. Then only life is interesting.
Absolutely.
So education for me has been challenging.
Right.
I wouldn't say sad, but definitely challenging, where I ask myself, am I up for this? Education has been getting up and said, wow, I love going to school because
Right.
I'm with children.
Correct.
Education has also been very confusing for me because I think I am in the field where there is a huge mismatch on how the youngsters who are actually receiving education is thinking, while my teachers who are educators who are actually imparting education is thinking. So how do I bridge the gap? And me being there is quite confusing also.
Yeah.
So because I have a mix of a three, I'm having an entertained life. It's like a movie, you know.
Absolutely.
You can't like a sad movie, you can't like a happy movie, but you like a confused movie. So my education life has been quite a roller coaster, and I love it.
You're giving me a one more perspective of education. It's like all the seasons. You experience all the seasons, and you also experience every bit of the education side.
You just don't know when the season is arriving.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And especially when we are handling with the Gen Z, outgoing Gen Z and the current generation Alpha.
Yeah.
So it becomes pretty challenging, right?
I actually also don't believe in Gen Z, Alpha, Millennium, because I feel today generation gap has not gone to like 5 years, 10 years, like we used to think of and give names to each other. I think generation gap is every year. I see a first standard child behaving very differently this year to, I'm sure the next year this another child in the same first standard is behaving very differently. And I've seen that over the 6 years.
Correct.
Like I know how 10th standard or when children outgoing of school used to behave,
Right.
to now how responsible, how aware, how curious they are about the world.
Correct.
It's a lot of difference, right?
Correct.
So generation gap, I think, has thinned down to a year today or 2 years today.
Right.
And it's no more of like 5 years, 10 years gap. And, we're thinking of different generation. No, I think we were the last like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One more thing, Aishwarya, whenever we have spoken more about the policies, and policies are made for student, teachers, and parents rather than for being for them. So in your journey, from the political point of view also, do you see the roadblocks have been coming up, or do you see new doors opening up which you didn't expect?
I think today policymakers have given us a lot of opportunity to make use of the existing policy. That's what I see. Whether it's the government, who is one of the biggest fundraisers in our country, trying to, increase the standards at a government level institution, to actually giving out a lot of opportunity to private schools also to actually expand their horizons. I won't talk about the rest of the country. At least for Karnataka, that I've been in education, the government throughout my 8 years have been quite understanding on how the private sector should be acting on education. I think there were a lot of reforms. From RT coming in initially without experimentation, to the government understanding that, within 1 kilometer of place, if you have a government school, the child has to go there, to today rethinking back on giving CSR funds back to education. I think government has been quite proactive. Policy makers have been quite understanding, and they understand that the private sector have a huge role to play also in bringing in quality into education today. But I think what's missing is how well the partnership and collaboration is working.
Yes. Right.
Each one is trying to be the best in their field and their terms. But I think what makes a huge difference is when both of them come together. Which slowly will start. People have started feeling it. Like the whole fact that CSR funds have to be promoted to education policy in Karnataka has really made a lot of difference, because a lot of corporates are looking at how they can increase the sector. So all these are great opportunities brought to us, right?
Right.
So when we talk about mental health getting into education, when we talk about arts getting into education, when we talk about skills being built in education, today there are a lot of companies working on life skills for children.
Correct.
Mental well-being is also a life skill part of the education, right? It doesn't come to the academic side of education. So for people like us, who handle all these products, to actually peep into schools where affordability can be beyond just basic knowledge is an opportunity.
Right. I think very important thing what you've spoken about is the partnership and the collaboration aspects, which is predominantly not taking at a faster pace, which should have been taking up, but slowly is picking up.
I think education is a very slow journey.
Right.
Taking any drastic steps actually cause more problems than solutions. So I think, like any company, I've seen you how slowly you've grown and built your curriculum to actually execute where you are today, right? It's not like you couldn't have hired few people to create the curriculum few years ago. But you having the first-hand experience of how children are behaving, how employees are behaving is such a huge part. So it's a slow process.
Correct.
I've been seeing you for at least like 6 years now.
Absolutely. Right.
So initially when I joined. So it's been 6 years to actually build your curriculum. I think it's foolishness if you're going to say the partnership between two people, especially like institutions and not people, is going to happen very quickly.
Correct.
So I think working towards it, setting goals, setting a lot of boundaries and priorities on what exactly should happen and how the partnership should go has a bigger role to play.
Correct.
Which people don't understand.
They don't understand.
And expectations actually goes beyond reality most of the time.
Right.
But when you're in the field, I think reality should be put first, and then expectations should be set
up. Correct. So when you spoke about the policies, right, and the political side, what is one thing which you feel should be changing from the political policymakers to truly make education inclusion?
I think inclusivity is beyond just acceptance today. And a lot of us think inclusivity is actually just accepting the vulnerability of the other person. No, it's not like that, right? Inclusion for me is equity. And I think equity is one of the values that we teach in our schools also.
Right.
Equity is not just like saying it's equal for me and you, so let's be inclusive. But equity is more about how I can raise the bar for you so that we still can hold hands.
Right?
Absolutely. And that should happen in education. Today, education is not about how many 5 people in a class getting sentenced. No.
Right.
Getting 95% of the class to do a 90% average is what you're looking forward, right? That's equity. So you have to hold on to a child, bring them to that level, make sure there is an inclusive environment around to bring in equity into the system, which I think we somewhere discount.
Right. I think equity is very, very nicely you put it out, that equity has to be taken up with all the educationists. That's where I think we can bring the first step towards making the whole environment and ecosystem more inclusion.
I think so, because before we used to have less number of schools, and everywhere across today schools have expanded with more people investing in education. So initially the schools were also looking at the best students coming into the institution and making the best.
Yeah.
That doesn't work anymore today.
Absolutely.
Today, schools and education system is catering to also convenience around, right?
Absolutely.
So the closer you stay, you want your child to go to that school. So it's about getting all variety and diversity of children into your school, bringing in the concept of equity, raising the bars at different levels, and making sure they walk out of the school feeling empowered.
Absolutely.
Inclusivity for me is how do you create a feeling of empowerment with every child? So that they think that, I can be better than who I am yesterday.
Absolutely. And especially when children are thinking about becoming a global citizen, it becomes utmost important for any institution to really think about the equity to be given out to each and every child. Phenomenal.
And I think that's also something that governments or policymakers should look at. Because I feel today, we're generalizing school system also as government schools, both in urban and rural areas.
Correct.
Which is, again, I think that's something to rediscover and rethink on. Because I think rural areas need more help in terms of infrastructure, in terms of resources, in terms of teachers, in terms of positioning their school, in terms of providing transportation for children. All those criteria don't happen in a government school in urban area.
Correct.
Because nearby people are going in, there's not a lot of transportation that's required. The number of schools, government schools are also much higher. If you really need some kind of infrastructure, you have people around providing you. The urban sector is looking at you. Obviously, the urban sector is much more in a better position to contribute towards such things than at a rural sector. But we're still looking at both those schools as government schools and not government rural schools and government urban schools.
Correct.
That's my small difference of equity today. I feel our priority by bringing in more urban schools will make sure the rural society to grow somewhere to become the urban society, which we're not planning, at least in education. I'm not sure of any other field, but my experience working in a rural school to uplift them, I feel the challenges are much higher. I've also tried it in an urban school in Bangalore, which is held by government. It's much easier for me to actually develop that than a rural school. So I think we need more people helping rural schools.
Correct.
Rather than urban government schools.
Makes sense. And I think that's a great initiative what people can really collaborate, as you rightly said, right? Collaboration and partnership can really help the rural schools to be brought up to the level of urban schools, what we are looking at.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, with one point you have spoken about teachers. And over last 8 to 9 years, I've known your schools, right? And I've been working for a longest period of time. One thing what I've noticed is, like, I have seen that most of the talented teachers, they stick around to your school, right? So what's been the secret?
I like how beautifully you put it, talented teachers.
Right.
If teachers can't embrace a change, they don't stick around in my institution, because
Right.
we are changing every day.
Right. Right.
Okay, my principals are on their toes every day.
Right.
My teachers are on their toes every day. They're
Right.
trying to create change. And if you ask me how it happens, I very early in my journey in education realized that education is not about paying fees or getting salary. It's a lot of making you feel respected.
Correct.
And especially with my teacher community.
Right.
Teachers have a huge bias in their head that we do a very secondary job. The more I, as an institution leader, can make them feel they're very important, they're worth it, and my institution is made up because of a combined effort of all of them, they will stick around with me. The day I feel like I'm paying you salary, you're here to do the job, I think that day is the end of the community relationship that we build in an institution. If you see institutions who've stayed around and teacher retention has been high, whether it's schools like, Sophia's or, Baldwin's, you see teachers with 30 years, 40 years, like retiring out of those institutions. I've also seen that in my organization. It's mainly because they all consider school as their first family.
Right.
And the only way you can make them feel that is give them respect.
Right.
Respect to express themselves,
Right.
respect to grow in the organization,
Right.
and respect to say that it's because of you that we are running.
Right.
I call it servant leadership after reading a book. I feel as institutions and institution leaders, we all should start working on servant leadership.
Very nice.
We're equally responsible for a teacher to stay with me as much as the teacher is putting an effort
Absolutely.
to stay in my institution.
Right. I think one more thing which you have spoken, not many of the educations they speak, it's the first family experience. Right. Then I've not heard from not too many of the educationists talking about the teachers. It's a first family experience.
Yeah.
Respect what you have spoken about it. That's one more thing which we brings to me is, what is the most pressing challenge as an educationist leader, what you face in your schools when we talk about bringing the mental health well-being for the students and the teachers?
I think the biggest challenge is you're considering mental well-being, or I'll call it well-being and not health, because we are not health specialists. Mental well-being as a priority is, I think, they look at it saying it's a secondary subject.
Right.
It is like it is not the main course, neither is it the starter, but it's a side dish, not even my dessert.
Right.
Which is the problem.
Right.
But I feel if we start making it a part of your main course,
Right.
life becomes easy.
Correct.
A lot of your challenges that's happening in school reduces. And it's how much you think it is important. And I don't think mental health needs to be a separate subject or a separate period, or you need a dedicated time for it. No, I think mental well-being can be very well connected to every subject, every class. You just have to be a keen listener in the class as an educator walking into class. That's when the first start of mental well-being of a child starts.
Correct. I think it's very beautifully articulated. Like how it's been taken up right now is not a main dish, but it's a side dish, and it has to come in the mainstream, basically.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think today what mental well-being as a concept in schools does is bring in some sort of a value system in a child.
Correct.
Okay, today children need space to express.
Yeah.
Children need space to feel affirmated. There's a lot of self-doubt. Self-affirmation is a huge part of what we need in well-being.
Right.
And both these things require communication.
Yeah.
And tell me, how many channels does our curriculum allow for children to communicate and express what they're feeling, and not just what they didn't understand in a class?
Right.
So just adding that element adds your mental well-being element, I think.
Correct.
And where you can't handle mental well-being as a normal educator, that's when you pass it on to an expert.
Yeah.
But having that channel is mandatory today. It's not a choice.
It is correct.
And today as schools, we're dealing with a lot of uncertain, insecure situations, right? The child is exposed to more and beyond what we as children were exposed to.
Correct.
Whether it's social media, whether it's parents working really hard. Probably I saw only my father working hard, but my mother completely taking care of me. And that was, I thought, world. But today, you need the father and the mother to work hard so that you give the best life for your child. So I don't blame my parents. But how do you create a balance when the child wants to express something about what he's feeling and when you don't have the mother or the father at home? So those are spaces I think it's also the responsibility of the school to address today, and that's become a part of the school's responsibility also, because we say we don't develop the child to just do well in grades.
Correct.
Most of the school have their tagline as holistic development, and holistic development includes personality development.
Absolutely. And I personally feel, holistic development as a term has been very abusing term.
Yeah.
Right. Every day it's been used.
Yeah.
Especially now the seasons are coming up.
If I can think about it, I feel how do you connect academics to holistic development is bringing in something called value education, and the value education will hold on to mental well-being.
Correct.
Automatically, without doing much of effort.
Correct. So you're more closer to mental well-being, because that's the one thing which people need to know how to express and communicate. One thing what I've noticed, especially in your school, there's a lot of openness among the students and teachers to speak about the mental well-being and acceptability here. How did you build up that kind of culture in that environment?
I think you use the right word, culture. It is culture building of NHPPS. For me, at National Hillview Public School or any organization, Amber Valley, Apollo National Public School, all my institutions, what defines our education is to take ownership of what we are learning. And the fact that you're taking ownership means that if you don't understand at a certain level, if you're not going to express, no one's going to come and ask you, did you learn it? This is one thing that I'm trying to tell my children again and again. And we're also defining from their morning dairies to their walls everywhere, saying that you're trying to be the best version of yourself. And the only way you can be the best version of yourself is expressing at least to yourself on what you were today and how you want to get somewhere tomorrow, right? So those are repeated words, terminologies, and also activities that I'm trying to do. Whether it was bringing in my Pigu into the system. I think we were one of the early schools who said we want a dedicated space for mental well-being in my school. We were one of the only schools who probably renamed your space, saying it's called redesign. You go there to redesign yourself, you know. And I personally decided that the mental well-being room in our school cannot be in some corner where the child is, being scared and going in. It should be a pride to walk into that room. Absolutely. The fact that you have realized that you need help and you're going in to accept and receive that help with open arms and showing your classmates or your friends that, what, I'm going in here, just hold on, itself was culture building for me.
Right. And I think we have already seen the result which has been coming up where everybody gives a priority now on the mental well-being. I ran a quick survey among most of the educationists in Bangalore, all the fellow people, to ask them what they had to ask you one question. Okay, especially not a question, I would say the word what they came out with, two words.
Okay.
They said, what does Aishwarya think about number one word is failure first.
I love it. I think failure should be practiced in schools.
Right.
Failure should become a habit for children. Because today the biggest challenge as adults in life that we face is to get in terms with your failure. But if that can be taught, practiced, and said that failure is only your first step to learning in school, I don't think it would be so challenging for us today.
I agree. Yes.
So I would say failure for me is accepting that, you can do better.
Yeah.
That's failure for me. Like, if you gonna sit back with your failure and say, tomorrow I'm not gonna get up, then you give up.
Right.
So not giving up and accepting that you're better than who you are itself is, for me, definition of failure. And I think it should be taught and practiced in school. In fact, after the value education lab that I've done, my dream is to create and execute a failure lab.
Wow.
Why should failure always be a negative term? Why can't it be a positive term?
Correct.
Why can't you redefine failure to be experiences that make you better in life?
Absolutely.
I think that's for me. Like my failures are my biggest teachers or my best books. Like I can go back to my own failure, redefine and say, okay, how am I going to rewrite this book again?
Right.
That is the motivation for me from failure.
Right.
So in my life, I think I followed one rule. I don't celebrate victories, nor do I, mourn or feel bad when I fail. I feel both are equal for me, and what is happening with the next day is my question.
Correct.
So, if you ask my EA, Suprabha, she'll say she never said, okay, it was a great event, guys, let's party. No, that's not going to happen with me. What's next is always my problem. Even if we really not do well in something or something goes wrong with us, my next reaction to is not feeling bad. I was like, okay, what went wrong? Let's find out.
Right.
So I think that has become a habit for me over years, and my life, my experience has taught me this. But I want schools to be teaching this to children.
Right.
Because I don't want people saying, what did I learn in school? I want everyone walking out of my school to say everything that I learned in my life today is at my school.
Absolutely. I think failure is very important part of being a holistic development.
Yeah.
Right. We can't ignore the failure.
Failure is part of life. Like you can't understand the feeling of success if you don't know the feeling of failure.
I agree. 100% I agree. The second word which most of the people asked was, and I wanted to ask you this, the importance of innovation in your life.
I think I said this very recently, even at my engineering college, that we're a very aspiring India today, with calling us young Indians, young age group. But people have to realize and understand that aspiring India can become a very productive India only with innovation. And for me, innovation is not doing differently on what you think, but innovation for me is about how do you create something which will help 10 people around you.
Correct.
Because innovation should become a need and a necessity and not just a want.
Correct.
I think there is a lot of difference in that,
correct. Right.
So why is Swiggy great today? Why is Elon Musk being celebrated today? Why is Google being the best company or the most richest company today? Because they have created innovation not just for themselves, but for thousands and millions and billions of people around the world.
Absolutely.
So innovation gets sustained only when you're helping other people.
Yes.
And other people, not by selling it, not by marketing it, but by understanding the need and the necessity to it. Why is Swiggy doing well? Because it's a need of the hour that you need comfort, food at what time you want with options, right? So no one's selling Swiggy to you.
Correct.
Okay, we are opening Swiggy on our own. We are opening Zomato on our own because it's our necessity, it's our need.
Correct.
In Swiggy, what happens is a different story. That's how business works. But what I'm trying to say is Amazon, Swiggy, take the best companies in the world. Take Zoho, take like Zepto. Why are they all doing well? Because it's just adding convenience to people's life. So innovation for me is how can you be more convenient?
Absolutely. And I think one of the convenience factor, I would say for the mental well-being, what you added in your school is a Catalyst Lab.
Yeah.
And I would love to know a little bit more about the Catalyst Lab, how you are actually transforming the education by bringing that kind of innovation in your school.
Catalyst is a value education lab, and I think it was not very late when I realized that what was missing in our education system in a structured manner was actually imparting values to our children. Our grandparents, our parents, and our family instilled values in us. Schools did instill values, but schools instilled values in terms of rules.
Correct.
But the rules had to change into more directions and not instructions. That was one thing. And I think I did ask myself very early saying, okay, Aisshwarya, you've got into education. What will not change in education in the next 10 years? Let's prepare for that instead of preparing for everything that's going to keep changing every day. How often can you change?
Absolutely.
But if I'm going to prepare for something that's not going to change.
Correct.
Like today, I remember Amazon founder asking him this question, and he said, what's not going to change is me able to deliver the package as fast as possible. So like that, what's not going to change in education? Okay, technology is going to change. Curriculum is going to change. pedagogy is going to change. The amount and content of knowledge that you're teaching a child is going to change.
Correct.
Based on the requirement.
Correct.
But how you use your values, how you instill your values, whether you ask your grandparents or you ask a Gen Z today, you have to learn respect.
Correct.
You have to learn integrity.
Correct.
You have to be trustworthy.
Correct.
Tell me, where are you instilling all this in school? So I felt there is a requirement of a need like this.
Right.
And like I spoke about the dishes, it had to be the main dish.
Right.
Otherwise, people would ignore it.
Absolutely.
So we created a dedicated space for children to understand what are the values they need to instill in themselves before they walk out of NHVPS to lead their lives.
Correct.
So that's when various values that I have grown up with from my parents to what I understood over life, whether it was growth mindset, whether it's constructive conflict resolution, because we're continuously conflicting with ourselves. Even the fact that gratitude, today is a gratitude journal day, it's a gratitude jar day. But I think understanding, being aware and expressing gratitude doesn't help anyone else around you except yourself.
Absolutely.
It just makes you feel better.
Absolutely.
Right? And even for me, when I added forgiveness to it, a lot of people ask me, Aishwarya, you're teaching children forgiveness. How do you explain that? And I remember reading a quote that said, anger is an emotion that had nowhere to go, but it was sadness that was kept somewhere and didn't come out as expression.
Wow.
Right? So forgiveness for me was eliminating that sadness as a feeling of bless, heal, forgive and forget, and not anger anymore. So I don't believe in teaching anger management to children, but I believe in teaching how do you express your sadness so that you feel better.
Very beautiful. I must say, you know what, when we talk about in education, it's all about creating a human beings. Right? And this is something very important lesson which every school should adapt to it. Because academically, what I have noticed, the children are very higher, they have a very higher IQ. EQ is something which we need to work around.
Definitely. EQ is definitely which we need to work around. And today, starting the podcast, we were talking about how difficult it is to get people on your team, right? You're not looking for people who are just knowledgeable. You're talking about people who can translate their knowledge and their passion into wisdom. They should be able to do the right thing at the right time, right? That doesn't come from IQ.
Absolutely.
It comes from EQ.
EQ only, yes.
It's about understanding emotion. It's about listening to the emotion. It's about respecting one another to actually create something, right?
Yes.
So why isn't that such a big part of the learning objective in schools?
Agreed. 100%.
In fact, it is. It is just underlined with so much pressure of maths, physics, geography, chemistry that you don't feel that, or you're not able to even open that chapter yet because you're still completing a lot of these chapters in the book. So I think that's the problem. But at least in our organization, we place that as the first chapter and not the last chapter.
Yes.
It's not moral science being taught in 10th standard as a mandatory subject to pass your 10th exam in CBSE, but how is moral science taught in first standard so that you don't have to teach it in 10th standard but ask them how they're feeling after learning this moral science should be the way education should look at things. So that's what we did with Catalyst. And I called it Catalyst because it's only a catalyst to our life to actually make ourselves better than what we were. And I say that again and again. And I call the tagline of Catalyst says as my space for self-discovery. So I think it's a place where adults, children, educators walk in and discover themselves because they're growing their mindset, they're resolving their conflicts, they're talking about I respect, they are walking into forgiveness. They're talking about gratitude, and finally they are self-affirmed and they go back as an empowered human being.
Yes.
That's Catalyst.
Very beautiful. Very beautiful. Say, I must say, you guys are doing a fabulous job.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about initiative like Catalyst, right? When we talk about teachers being empowered on a regular basis, the kind of training and workshops what you do, what is the role of a parent? When we talk about in the journey of really bringing that kind of holistic development among the children.
I think parents play a very important and a crucial role. Why do I say crucial? Is because their acceptance to change is the most important aspect in the process of change that happens in education. Because the more they question why certain things are happening in front of a child, the more doubts the child gets, why am I studying this subject? So their acceptance to various subjects and mental well-being or to Asking a child after coming back from an annual day how was your practice to how was the performance go is equally important to check the report card of a child before they check their grades.
Right.
I think that's the balanced role we expect parents to play.
Right.
The moment they feel that it's very important to check those report cards, but
Right.
as not as important to ask my child how well is she practicing for her annual day,
Right.
the child starts creating a bias in her head. Okay, maybe this is not that important.
Correct.
So children have a white slate.
Right.
They have a plain white canvas, right?
Right.
We are everyone around them who are painting their canvas for them.
Absolutely.
So I think we should be careful. And what I believe and what I heard very early when I used to talk about parenting or talk about parenting tips is parenting is not about controlling your child's emotion or action. It's about controlling your emotion and action in front of your child.
Yes.
And not behaving like a child in front of them.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
That's, I think, the key to parenting.
It is indeed. And I think what you said, I can 100% connect with that. It's a blank canvas. What you're going to fill up with the colors. As you rightly said, instead of reacting, let's respond to the children, right? And that's what they are very good in terms of mirroring us.
No, I'm not even saying response is going to be an everyday piece of cake for us. We are all going through problems. Like tomorrow, if I've not slept for 5 days and I walk into school and a child wishes me good morning, ma'am, I might not have the strength to wish her good morning because I'm in a different mindset.
Right.
But stopping yourself and reflecting on what went wrong and correcting yourself is very important. And acceptance of our shortfalls is also very important. Like, I feel as parents, we might yell at a child or we might say no or talk about a teacher in front of them. How quickly do you say, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that in front of the child is also equally important.
It is.
Because that's how you're going to actually band-aid the wound.
Correct.
And if you don't band-aid the wound, it's going to get septic. And if you still don't take care of it, then it's going to go into some kind of infection. Then you need a doctor to do it. You can't do it. So it's just like that, You either you band-aid that situation at that point of time to camouflage and tell the child saying that, okay, I also screamed at you or I also did this mistake. Now, I shouldn't have done that. Let's see what to do about it. They also understand that it's okay to accept that you went wrong.
Right.
But I feel somewhere we all adults, I don't know about parents, we all fear to accept even though we know sometimes we're wrong.
Yes. Correct.
For us, ignorance is better than acceptance. But the day ignorance gets cut out and acceptance starts becoming a part of our life, I think we'll all be fine.
Impact on what we're going to be creating among the children.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think with this, I'll come to the one more part, which talks about now the society is really opening up, of really understanding about the mental well-being and about the identity, and this has really pushed the schools to rethink about the importance of having a mental well-being or the inclusion within the schools. So what do you think about the future of inclusion going to be?
I think it's going to be a very dynamic, diverse one.
Right.
Honestly, if you ask me if inclusion is having a LGBT club or having acceptance to who we are and stuff, I don't believe in it. I think I have a very different way to it. I still remember a child walking up to me a few years ago, not very far, when the court order came in and said, ma'am, can we have an LGBT club in our school? I looked at them and I asked them, do we have a male club? Do we have a female club? Why do you have an LGBT club? The fact that you're coming into school is we're not having gender bias. We don't have a religion bias. We don't have a society, affluent bias. We don't have a professional bias saying that if you're a doctor's child, you're going to study here. You're this one's child, you're going to study here. No, we don't have anything like that. You're coming into uniforms saying that we're all one, we're all equal, we're here to help each other. So I don't see the requirement of diversifying just because inclusion is a very trending term.
Yeah.
Inclusion for me is about respecting one another.
Correct.
You can have your feelings, you can feel the way you feel, and you can identify yourself variously. But it doesn't have to be shouting out in front of people or trying to give extra importance to someone. I don't think we should be able to create a society like that. The fact that today we are fighting for women empowerment or women's safety and all that is because women were not as much as inclusive in the process of growth of, the world like how it was.
Correct.
But why should we again label someone else as something else and still say, okay, inclusion? No, we're all equally achieving, equally aspiring human beings.
Yes.
Male, female, something else, I don't know.
Correct.
We all have equal opportunities.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you can give equal opportunities to everyone is inclusivity for me.
Yes. That's very beautifully said. I mean, I can really relate with what you said earlier, equity.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes more sense over here that how a school's leaders and teachers and the students and the parents can really adapt to inclusion.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Great. So I think before finishing this conversation, I'm getting into something very interesting round, which I created for this particular podcast.
Okay.
It's a quick fire round.
Okay.
So whatever comes to your first thing in your mind, okay, you have to quickly say that. Okay.
Okay.
So here are the questions. Okay. I'm going to start shooting the questions to you. One word to describe your latest travel and your learning from it.
Vintage.
Your biggest mentor.
My father.
Okay. What should students focus on in today's world?
Students should focus on building curiosity.
Very nice. A book that everyone should read?
Atomic Habits.
Very nice. If you could tell teachers one thing today, what would it be?
You are also learning in the classroom.
Very nice. And best advice you have received?
Best advice I've received is probably, I've said this and I think it's a recent part of my Instagram story also, is shut up when you're right and stand up when you're wrong.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you so much, Aisshwarya.
No, thank you.
Indeed pleasure for me to have this kind of conversation. I think after a long time we had this kind of conversation and I really enjoyed. I learned a lot and I'm 200% sure our viewers would have also really enjoyed and learned a lot of things, especially coming from a very young, dynamic educationist, from Namma Bengaluru. And I'm really happy to see the kind of inputs what she has given. It's really going to add value to not only to the education institutions, but also to the educational reforms, to the parents, to the schools, and every aspects of it. Thank you once again, Aisshwarya.
Thank you, Chetan. I before few days ago, I used to be feeling so good that I'm the young educator around. I like the word young around me. But honestly, if you ask me today, I don't like it anymore. I feel we need more youngsters in education.
I agree.
We need, I really hope, looking at me and seeing how much fun I'm having in education, a lot more youngsters join education. Because I feel it's the need of the hour. And if we have to progress as a country, we have to get our education in quality. And we have to deliver quality education to everyone possible.
Right.
So I think I would love to be that day where I'm not the very few youngsters in education. That's my goal.
And I'm sure you're going to be inspiring a lot of people to really join the education.
Thank you, Chetan, for a lovely conversation.
It's been such a pleasure over here, Aisshwarya.
Yeah,
and thank you for joining us at Beyond Books. Always remember that education is a journey, not a destination. And I would say if you love today's podcast, do subscribe. And do share it to the people who really believe in meaningful education. Let's create the community of change makers. Till then, stay focused, stay more curious, and keep exploring beyond books. Thank you.